Just ahead, there's another edition of the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks and of Tough TV in the Orlando area. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm political analyst Al Spry. We have the Surgeon General of Florida. I bet you didn't know there was a Surgeon General of Florida, Reagan.
Probably a lot of people out there didn't. He is also Florida's Secretary of Health, Dr. John Armstrong, and he has a most important healthy weight initiative that they are doing. The figures will just scare you half to death. Stay put. The Florida Roundtable begins following these messages. This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks and in the Orlando area on Tough TV. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
I'm political analyst Al Spry. And Reagan, when I watch TV, I watch Tough TV.
There you go.
It's fun. It's educational. You know, it's great to be on.
Mm-hmm.
So we appreciate Tough TV, and you will too. And how do you get Tough TV? Well, we're on Saturdays at 9 a.m. We're also on Thursdays at 9 a.m. here in Orlando on Tough TV 38. Also, listeners can receive Tough TV 38 over the air with their HD antenna. You can get one at your local Radio Shack. You can get it if you live in select apartments and mobile home parks in Central Florida. Also, Tough TV 38 is carried on Channel 69 on the Summit Broadband cable TV system. And if you don't get Tough TV, well, I demand that you demand to get it. Call your local cable or satellite provider today.
All right, do that. Well, Al, you've got a winner and a loser of the week here for us again.
The winner of the week in politics here in our Sunshine State is C.W. Bill Young. To the shock of many, the 22-term Pinellas congressman announced his retirement last week, leading to a flood of lavish and bipartisan praise for all he has done in the Tampa Bay area. Also, the loser of the week, Jessica Ehrlich, the St. Petersburg Democrat, has been running for a seat for nearly 3 years, but Young's announcement had almost no fellow Democrats, suggesting Ehrlich would now be the likely nominee. And would it have killed Ehrlich to offer up one "thanks for your service, Bill" comment about Young before crowing about his departure and asking for more campaign donations? So
44 years in the Congress.
44 years.
Longer than many of our listeners have been alive, you know.
Longer than I've been here, Reagan.
Little bit of let me give you a possible here's a Smith prediction. Watch for this. I don't know, not a sure thing. Alex Sink has announced she is not running for governor. She will not be in the Democratic primary. However, she refused to say that she wouldn't run for Bill Young's seat in the Congress, even though she doesn't live in the district. She has already announced that if she decides to run, she will move and reside in the district as required. So put that name in the back of your mind as a possible candidate to replace Bill Young.
We'll keep her on our radar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz, known to some as Debbie Downer, has a new book. It is a wake-up call for the next generation. It's called For the Next Generation, a wake-up call to solving our nation's problems. The Florida Democrat outlines a progressive agenda. Yeah, let's see how good that's worked out for us in the last 50 years. While reflecting on gridlock and partisanship, though she does not hold back criticizing the GOP. Oh, really? Well, of course she doesn't hold back criticizing the GOP. She's a Florida Democratic congresswoman.
She never held back when she was in the Florida legislature.
Reagan, I'm going to step on the soapbox for just a moment.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you how we solve our problems, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we got here. We got here because in the 1970s, we decided to start dropping our trade barriers. We decided that free trade and globalization was the key to continued economic prosperity in the United States and abroad. Big mistake. Once we dropped our trade barriers, well, what happened to all our jobs? 25% of our employment in the United States used to be manufacturing. We used to have plenty of jobs for people even if they didn't have a college degree. And some, even if they didn't have a high school diploma, they could still provide for their families. And they still had the wherewithal to live a little piece of the American dream. They weren't asking for much. They were just looking to live a little piece of the American dream. So what happened? Well, greed happened. We decided to say, to heck with it. Let's send all those jobs to China. Let's send all those jobs to Mexico and Central Asia and South America and other parts thereof. So, what do we have now? Cheap goods that fall apart, horrible working conditions for the world's masses that aren't here in the United States. We just heard about collapsing buildings in Bangladesh, killing over 1,000 people, when we used to make all our garments right here in the United States. And then Bill Clinton comes in the Republican Congress and says, hey, that was a great idea. Let's do NAFTA now. And then NAFTA came in and sent more jobs to Mexico. Mm-hmm. And the only ones making any money are the large corporations, but nobody has any jobs. Nobody has any jobs, so nobody is paying any taxes. Nobody's paying any taxes, so how's big government going to function? And then we have big government telling you, we're going to take care of you. But now we can't pay for it. Reagan.
And on that note, I think we'll go ahead and take a break along the network line. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And, of course, I'm the ever-quiet and self-reserved Al Spry.
We will be joined by Florida's Surgeon General and Secretary of Health as the conversation continues. We're back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks and of Tough TV in the Orlando area. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And Al, as promised, we are joined at this point of the program in studio by the Surgeon General of the state of Florida, Dr. John Armstrong. Dr. Armstrong, welcome to the Florida Roundtable. We're delighted to have you with us here today.
Well, thank you, Al and Reagan. I'm glad to be here.
Let us start before you've got some special projects and things that you're working on right now. But before we get into all of that, let me ask you to take the first minute and share with the audience just a little bit about yourself and your background and how it is you came to be the Surgeon General of Florida.
Well, I'm privileged to serve as our State Surgeon General and Secretary of Health, appointed by our governor in April of 2012. And I came to this position from the University of South Florida in Tampa, where I was the Chief Medical Officer for the Center for Advanced Medical Learning and Simulation, which is a remarkable 90,000 square foot facility, 3 stories in downtown Tampa that's seeking to change the way we educate and train health professionals. Mm-hmm. I'm a trauma surgeon. I had a wonderful career in the Army and was privileged to be at the University of Florida in Gainesville, ultimately as trauma medical director before moving to Tampa.
All right. Well, and now Tallahassee is home. Is that, and we can come back to this a little bit later, I guess, you serve at the pleasure of the governor, or is this a fixed term that goes on, or how does that work?
I serve at the pleasure of the governor.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, we're very happy that he has the pleasure to appoint you, and for a lot of folks, and I could count myself among them at first, I didn't realize that Florida had its own Surgeon General. Tell us a little bit about the position, how long it's been around, and what you do as Surgeon General.
Well, the position is remarkable for our state in combining Surgeon General with Secretary of Health. So as Surgeon General, I bring a voice to health and health care for all people in Florida. And as Secretary of Health, I'm privileged to lead a department of nearly 17,000 public health professionals with a state health office and 67 county health departments working to protect, promote, and improve the health of all people in Florida. We focus on core public health missions to include disease control. We regulate individual health professionals, over 40 health professionals to include physicians, nurses, psychologists, dietitians, and we ensure that our state is ready for health issues when it comes to disaster. Mm-hmm. And so far, we are doing quite well as a state with readiness.
So your office sets policies and works with the health directors of all 67 counties?
We certainly take the direction of our governor and of our legislature, and then we work to implement the policies and programs that have been established by our governor and by the legislature.
Mm-hmm. Is there a kind of a coordination of information? Does your office act as kind of like seems like almost every year we have an outbreak of equine encephalitis. Is the Tallahassee Center kind of a clearinghouse, coordinating, or what would your involvement in that be?
I think our Department of Health is an important information resource. Importantly, when it comes to disease clusters and outbreaks, we are the responder through our county health departments, and we take the information as it unfolds. We work to contain disease outbreaks and ultimately prevent them from occurring again.
Mm-hmm.
So you work with the CDC and other agencies like that?
We have a variety of partnerships. Obviously, working with the Centers for Disease Control is very important so that we can see what's happening nationally and then put that into a Florida context. We actively seek partnerships across a whole host of areas.
All right. Well, I tell you, you've got some. We have a problem in Florida, and so you've got a new initiative going through your office, healthy weight, and it's become a priority for the Department of Health.
As we look at the bright future here in Florida, we recognize that the number one threat to that future in public health is the challenge of weight. Only 35% of Floridians are currently at healthy weight, which means that 2/3 are overweight or obese.
Wow.
And if we track this to 2030, almost 2/3 of Floridians will be obese. But what I want to share with you, Alan Reagan, that really scares me is that on our current trend, 6 out of 10 babies born today will be obese or overweight before graduating from high school.
Wow. Now that is scary. I guess all you have to do is walk down the street, really, to realize that there has been a change over the last, say, 30 years or so. What happened to us? What is it? This computer and the games and children being frozen in front? What is your notion? How did we get into this mess?
Well, unfortunately, we have environments that make the unhealthy choice the easier choice. And those environments include food and beverage, physical activity, schools, workplace, and the airwaves or messaging. And so in order to turn this around, we have to reshape those environments together in our communities. And that's really the point to the Healthiest Weight Florida initiative, working together locally to provide more supportive environments so that the healthy choice becomes the easier choice.
Well, I did a little research on this in the past because I was wondering why the sea change. We used to be a fairly healthy nation when Reagan and I were younger. You really didn't often see overweight or obese people. And then we had this thing come in the 70s called the smorgasbord, and everyone's portions started to become larger. My wife, who's a nurse, refers to it as portion distortion. And I think the trend now is if you don't have that heaping plate in a restaurant, be it a fast food restaurant or a full-service restaurant, you think you're getting ripped off. And the portion size is about double, I think, what it should be. My wife and I go out and we share plates because one plate feeds 2 to 2.5 people. How do you change that? How do you change that mindset among restaurateurs to feed people less and also to feed them less carbs? Because I think carbs is a big part of this as well.
Well, there are so many pieces to this puzzle, but when it comes to what we're taking in as food, we want to work with the food and beverage industry to rethink what's offered on menus. And we need to help people of Florida recognize that there's not just a dollar cost to a menu choice, there's a calorie cost to that. And that calorie cost accumulates over time, generating weight challenge, which threatens the ability of Florida's kids, adults, and families to live as they want to live in our great state.
And this kind of, there's a multiplicity of problems that can be connected to this. It doesn't end with just, I got a couple too many pounds that I need to get rid of. This leads to a lot of other things, diabetes. Kind of expand it for us a little bit.
There are a variety of chronic conditions that come from the disease of obesity. And if you just think about the top four alone, so heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and arthritis, those not only shorten lifespans, they're extraordinarily costly. In fact, just to manage those four conditions alone among people who are obese over the next 17 years will cost at least $34 billion with a B dollars. That's half a state budget.
Yeah, it is.
And I was going to say that a good point here is not only people are more obese and more overweight, over 50% of our dogs and cats are also overweight. Because when we're eating more, we're thinking that other creatures, our pets and our kids, should eat more too. And it becomes just a whole ethos, I think.
Well, everything in our environment becomes a reflection of this reality that we eat more than we need to, and we have become very inactive as a society.
Now, you've launched an initiative addressing all of this. There's video available. I'll start at the beginning for us. What happened that we decided the state actually has to do something about this?
Well, when I came into office, I looked at the healthcare landscape along with a variety of stakeholders across our state and recognized that our challenge of weight was connected to so many other public health problems. It made sense to focus on solving this particular riddle. And so thus Healthiest Weight Florida was born. And there is more information on our website, which is healthiestweightfl.com, healthiestweightfl.com. What we're doing is creating partnerships, public-private partnerships across this state. We're doing it with other state agencies, local government, businesses, the faith-based communities, schools, any organization or group interested in this initiative. And we're helping to define what in those communities will inform those Floridians, kids, adults, and families about making healthier choices regarding what they're eating and how they're being active in life. So this initiative gets expressed in different ways depending upon what works in different communities.
Mm-hmm. I understand that you have a summary video. You had a symposium on the healthiest weight back in January, and folks can go onto YouTube and see a summary of that symposium.
YouTube resource is wonderful for looking at the results of that symposium. We held it right here in Orlando, and it was our launch to really get communities energized behind the importance of this. You know, it's one thing to talk about awareness. It's quite another to say, what are we going to do about this? And that's the phase that we're in now. What are we going to do about this? We can do something. And the reality is we must do something because otherwise our future is threatened. The vitality of the state is threatened.
Mm-hmm.
Economic vitality as well, because healthcare is, as we know, expensive. And the more you need, the more you're spending. And if you can't afford it, and we'll be talking more about that in the next segment. Obamacare and such, but I wanted to also bring up a good statistic here. We have dropped from 19th to 12th in the nation for healthiest weight. So congratulations to you.
I suppose that's good, although, at the outset, the doctor laid out some pretty scary figures there. I'm wondering what it's like in the rest of the states. Wow. Well, I tell you what, we'll talk about those things. We're going to take a little bit of a pause along our network line here. We'll remind you that this is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks and of Tough TV in Orlando. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
Our very special guest, Dr. John Armstrong. He is Florida's Surgeon General and Secretary of Health, and we'll continue our conversation following these messages. From Pensacola to Key West and all points in between, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
Our very special guest in studio this day is Dr. John Armstrong, Florida's Surgeon General and Secretary of Health. And, Doctor, it is a pleasure to have you with us. I know we want to talk about the new federal health care business and whatnot, but before we get to that, Again, this Healthy Weight Florida, it's healthyweightfl.com. Healthyweightfl.com.
Healthiestweight.com.
I'm sorry. Healthiestweight.com. All kinds of good information is there for folks who want to visit the website. It's a multiple outreach. I just wondered, when with budgetary problems, of course, now the governor is talking about tax cuts. We seem to have some surplus found. But and you mentioned working with restaurants and our portions and all that kind of thing. We have to be aware of the food we're eating. But young people, a lot of times when there are budgetary problems in our local school systems, art class, music class, phys ed are the first things to go out the window. How are we doing with young people? As you know, when I was a kid, cartoons on the TV in the afternoon. You'd come home from school, and I was fortunate enough that my mother said, "Oh no, outside and play." Baseball, whatever, and we got exercise that way, and we had the phys ed classes in the school. Today they come home and they've got all this electronic. I almost said garbage.
Well,
I guess I did say garbage, didn't I?
It's fine to use that word.
That's fine. I have a few years on it, and then if I want to call it garbage, we'll hear about this. I know we will, but it's become a babysitter, and the business of playing outside, and this, how are we doing with that? What effort, what role are we taking to address the problem with young people?
Well, the Healthiest Weight Florida initiative is focused on the school's environment along with what happens after school. And so we're working with interested school boards and superintendents and our State Department of Education to rethink how we're doing breakfast and lunch in schools. You're probably aware we give out a lot of free breakfast and lunch here in the state. Why not make meal times parts of a nutrition curriculum and talk about, in particular, fresh from Florida fruits and vegetables?
Yeah.
Why don't we engage students in reflecting on how it is that they feel when they eat various types of foods and how important getting a good breakfast and lunch is for their performance in school? We can do that within the existing curriculum. We're not talking about extending the school day. We're not talking about changing the curriculum. Simply use the time that we have to greater advantage of kids. And let's remember the teachers, and also let's remember to get messages home to the parents.
I think another focus, and I'm sure this is part of it, is we used for a long time this food pyramid, which put grains and carbs as the largest part of your diet and then moved up from there. And I think, especially in poorer communities, we're seeing a massive consumption of these carbs because they're cheap. They're cheap to buy if you're on, I guess it's called SNAP now. It used to be known as food stamps. So is there a move away from this pyramid now? Are we doing something else now? Because I think that got a lot of people confused that they should be eating all these carbs, which personally I don't think is very good for a person.
The answer, as with most things in life, is balance. And a better approach beyond the food plate is expressed in the numbers 95210. So a holistic approach to wellness and healthier living works for kids, works for adults. 9 hours of sleep a night for kids, 5 fresh fruits and vegetables servings a day, no more than 2 hours in front of the TV. Do you realize adults spend 4.5 hours in front of the television set every day? Think about all of that time that could go into the next 1 hour of physical activity, and then 0 sugary beverages and 0 tobacco products. So 95210, it's really a better expression of the behaviors that will lead to healthier life.
Sounds like a zip code in California. That's a good way to.
Anything we can do to make it memorable.
Beverly Hills 95210 or something like that. But in all seriousness, I agree. We need to move more. We need to eat more fresh vegetables and fruits. We need to get away from the TV. I think many of our social ills can be alleviated by people turning off the TV more and maybe getting a little more active in what's going on around them. So I totally agree with that, and I wish you luck with this Healthiest Weight initiative. It's a great idea. We have to do something, obviously.
And I think it's important. We did this. I mentioned this at the very outset too, but I want to repeat this. You have some frightening numbers that over the next 20 years, where obesity can take Florida, it affects type 2 diabetes, new cases of heart disease and stroke, new cases of hypertension, new cases of arthritis, new cases of obesity-related cancers. It's not just a question of put down the candy and have an apple instead or something. I mean, it is an incredibly far-reaching effort that covers an awful lot of ground.
And we have to do it now. We cannot afford to wait. And the solution here is not going to be a snap of the fingers with a fad diet or a fad exercise program. The solution is to shape environments so that over time, the sum of seemingly small choices means that we lose our excess weight and we sustain a healthy weight. And we're committed to seeing this through.
Now, in your in this Healthiest Weight initiative, who are the principal folks that are doing the outreach? And aside from yourself, I mean, you're here. Obviously, we're talking about it. But the foot soldiers, how are we doing this? How are we getting the word out?
So we're getting this out through our county health departments. Again, we have 67 there in every community in our state. Importantly, we're doing this through interested schools and through hospitals and health professional communities. We're doing it through the Chamber of Commerce, recognizing the importance of business in solving this problem. We're doing it through media. Mm-hmm. And we're doing it through food and beverage industry to include the fast food restaurant industry. If you recognize that a third of Floridians get a meal a day at a fast food establishment, think about that as a touch point. Yeah. What is it that we can do to help inform people at the counter to make healthier choices? So we have a whole host of stakeholders. And again, any group that is interested in partnering with us is welcome to go to our website. We have contact information there. And that's how we're going to continue to gain momentum. We've gone from number 19 to number 12 in Healthiest Weight. We've done that in less than a year of launching this initiative. And while the benchmarks of other states are not particularly good, the reality is that we have jumped 7 spots, and we intend to beat Colorado. Colorado is the healthiest weight state, and it's time for Florida to assume that top ranking. After all, in the state, we know a little bit about being number 1.
Yes, we do. We certainly do. HealthiestWeightFL.com. And all that information is there. They can contact your office or find some direction on how to get involved.
Precisely.
That's the important thing.
All right. Well, I'd like to switch gears and talk a little bit about the Obamacare, also known as the... what's it known as again? I always know it as Obamacare.
Affordable Health Care Act. Yes. I held on to my wallet as I said that.
But, what is Florida in place for this? What do people need to know? Or what do people need to do as far as in Florida to get on board with this ACA?
Well, what the Department of Health is focused on is addressing the behaviors that lead to ill health and chronic diseases. Mm-hmm. And while the Accountable Care Act is really focused on the health insurance angle to health, we're more focused on the major determinants of health, which involve behaviors and socioeconomics and physical environments. And so I would urge Floridians to reflect on how it is that they can eat more nutritiously and how they can be more active in life. And if I may, I want to share 3 things that every Floridian can do right now to move toward healthier living. The first is to substitute water for sugary beverages. Believe it or not, just cutting your sugary beverages by 50% will not only make you feel better, but you will see the beginnings of weight loss. The second is to substitute fresh from Florida fruits and vegetables for breakfast and for lunch. We live in a state where we have affordable fresh from Florida fruits and vegetables. So how about strawberries when in season, oranges when in season for breakfast instead of a bowl of processed cereal. And then for lunch, when you need a crunch, how about carrots and celery as opposed to chips? Mm-hmm. Again, it's the sum of small choices over time that's going to lead to a healthier weight and healthier living. And the third is, where possible, take the stairs instead of the elevator. And if you have a lunch break, why don't you spend 30 minutes of an hour-long lunch break walking? Mm-hmm. Over time, this leads to dramatic results for individuals.
Before you go, I have one further question. What is the response of the fast food industry? Because as you know, the fast food industry is a business. It's big business. It makes big profits. It makes big profits because it gets people addicted to the type of food that's served. Obviously, there's additives in there that keep people coming back. So what has been their response, and is it just lip service? Are you really going to see? Because remember, if people eat healthier and don't eat as much fast food companies are going to lose money, and fast food companies don't want to lose money. So what are you seeing there?
Well, I've spoken to a number of proprietors of fast food establishments, and I recognize that the Burger King headquarters is here in our state in Miami. And the response I'm getting is one of interest. And I'm looking for a win-win. And in fact, I'm looking to not only get messages to Floridians and visitors who go to a fast food establishment for a meal, I'm looking for ways of reshaping what is a fast food meal. And part of this initiative will be a competition to define a fast food nutritious meal. Right now, each meal that comes out takes about 3 minutes to prepare. Mm-hmm. Is there a way that we can do that with fresh from Florida, fruits and vegetables and other ingredients? Why not make it a challenge? Look at what's happened when we have challenged the human spirit when it comes to getting to outer space, when it comes to solving extraordinary dilemmas. We've actually found solutions, and so that's the nature of that quest.
It's a big challenge and a big quest, but it sounds to me like you're up to the job here. And it's a daunting task, without a doubt, but one that, as we have laid out here, is very important, ought to be right up near the top of the list. When you have your health, you have everything, and nobody can take it away from you. But when we have this obesity problem, and it's a growing problem, we're headed for trouble. And I don't think that's putting it too strongly, as our population as a whole. So my hat's off to you for what you're trying to do, Doctor. This is it's a marvelous program, and we hope that you will come back periodically, maybe 2-3 months from now, give us a little update on how it's going, and we'd love to have you come back here on a regular basis and let us know how things are working out for you.
We can solve our weight challenge as a team sport, and I look forward to returning to share with you our progress.
I like the sound of that. That is Dr. John Armstrong. He is Florida's Attorney General and Secretary of Health. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And Al and I will continue the conversation in a moment. We're back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And a pleasure it was to have Dr. John Armstrong with us, the Florida Surgeon General. And now you know, Florida does have a Surgeon General. And he's a busy man.
He is.
He's well qualified and a very busy man. And I certainly wish him well. I go to the website and maybe I can figure out how to drop a couple of pounds. I don't think I don't qualify.
You look great. You're in shape, right?
Well,
you're fine.
You and I try. You can always do a little better. So you never can tell. I tell you what. Earlier on in the program, you were talking about NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and how we've shipped jobs out, and I was taken back to the election of 1992, where George H.W. Bush was terminated in office after one term and replaced by Bill Clinton. But the differences between the two, as far as those things were concerned, was absolutely nil. They were both in favor of it. It didn't matter here in Florida or who you voted for. We were going to get NAFTA either way.
You remember Ross Perot?
Sure.
Ross Perot got 10% of the vote that election.
Yeah.
Ross Perot said, "You're going to hear a giant sucking sound.
That's
if
exactly
NAFTA
what
passes.
he said. That's exactly what he said.
It's going to be all the jobs going away.
Remember
that?
We were doing this show, and in those years, Bob Graham was the senior United States senator, a Democrat, good friend, and he sat in this very studio with me and predicted that if NAFTA was put through, it was going to be disastrous for Florida farmers. And, you'd be buying Mexican tomatoes instead of Florida
And it's
tomatoes.
largely come to pass, hasn't it?
It certainly has.
And you know what we're getting from Mexico? We had a salmonella outbreak earlier this year because of Mexican cucumbers. So everything that they said would come to pass has come to pass. But people still look at Bill Clinton like he's the second coming, and I don't understand that. That man did more damage to the U.S. economy between deregulation of the telecommunications industry, and don't forget, he's the one who was behind, along with the Republican Congress, we can't leave them out, the Glass-Steagall, which is what led to the 2008 crash.
Yeah.
But yet everything's still in place. So what is the likelihood of having another crash? I mean, really, we're teetering, Reagan, and unless people wake up, I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, we take it one day at a time, but I think you're on the right track there, and we can explore answers and some notions. It's that same Bill Clinton that after the last government shutdown promised us that the era of big government was over.
Well, he also said he did not have sexual relations with that woman.
But the current president wants us to give us the biggest increase in the size of the government that we've had since Lyndon Johnson.
Yes.
So I don't know. Bill hasn't got his finger in the wind right now, testing which way people are blowing. But
I'll say this one thing before we go. If you don't have the jobs, government has to step in with social services. So if you get rid of social services without the jobs in place, then you're really going to see some hurting people. We've got painted ourselves into this mess. We have to restore our jobs before we can paint ourselves out.
Yeah, there you are. Well, let us pause again along the network line. We'll remind you that this is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
And we'll continue our conversation in a moment. We're back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And before we go today, Al, we want to talk a couple of minutes about our guest scheduled to be with us here next week, and that is former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura.
Jesse Ventura with a new book out about the Kennedy assassination, just in time for the 50th anniversary of the assassination. Can you believe it's been 50 years, Reagan?
I cannot. And I know exactly where I was and what I was doing when I heard the news that the president had been shot. Yes, I was a teenager. I was a young teenager when that happened. 25 years ago, I was here in Orlando doing a specially produced programs, and I was working in a newsroom with a gentleman by the name of Bill Hampton, who had been working at WFAA in Dallas and was there the day that it happened and was an eyewitness. And so I well remember, no. To answer your question, no, it's not 50 years. It's about 6 months ago, I think.
It does go quickly, but there are still unanswered questions about this, and we're going to be talking with Jesse Ventura, former governor of Minnesota, and we'll get the 63 reasons why he thinks there was a conspiracy. And
if you've been here with us before, you know that the former governor has been a guest on the show several times. Love him or hate him, there is no mistaking where he stands. He puts it out there for you, and I'm prepared for him to be making his case for this new book, in I'm sure, dramatic fashion.
Oh, absolutely. But before we go, as a tease, Reagan, what do you think? Do you think it was just Oswald, or do you think there was a conspiracy?
Well, at times in my life I have wavered. I can buy into some of the conspiracy business. I also put a lot of credence in the Warren Commission, the over 800 pages that the group put together. The last surviving member of that is gone now. It was Gerald Ford, who was just a congressman at the time, there are books out there that will tell you that Oswald had the capability to act alone. So, but we'll get Jesse's take on this, and we'll allow you to form your opinions. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
We thank you for your time, and we'll see you again in 1 week with another edition of the Florida Roundtable.
You've been listening to Florida Roundtable, a weekly look at issues and problems of concern to Floridians from a state, national, and international perspective. Presented by the Florida News Network with your hosts, Reagan Smith and Al Spry. The views and opinions expressed during the preceding program are solely those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station's ownership, management, or sponsors of FNN. Your views and opinions are welcome. Address your card or letter to Florida Roundtable in care of Reagan Smith, 2500 Maitland Center Parkway, Suite 407, Maitland, Florida, 32751. Or you may email reagansmith@fnnonline.com. Thank you for listening, and please join us again next week for another edition of Florida Roundtable.